Dr. Carter, thank you again for joining us today. I'm so glad that you're with us. Today, what we've been doing is we've been talking specifically about mental health, but also the stigma that comes with this topic. And in our culture, but I think especially in the church, oftentimes it feels like the topic of mental health is taboo. And I'm curious, why do you think that is? Why is it hard to talk about?
Broadly speaking, I think mental health has been difficult for people to understand, and it's a long-standing history. So in this country, and actually globally, you see people with mental health problems as being portrayed as very odd, unusual, people sometimes being violent because they have mental health problems. And because of that, there's been a lot of withdrawal from those individuals. There's a lot of fear that I think the general public has or has had because of people with mental illness. And it's simply because they don't understand what's going on. I think we see individuals who believe that their immoral behavior or sin has caused their mental health problems. So they don't want to talk about it because then they also have to talk about the sin that supposedly caused the problems too. And so there's a lot of silence there. And then in general, there's a lot of shame, I think, in the Christian community when we have mental health problems because we assume that our faith should make us better,
right.
And there's a lot of pressure that we put on ourselves that we're not good Christians if we're not healthy. And so that lack of transparency, I think, is the result of feeling that shame. So in recent years, there's been a lot more sensitivity, not just in the general public, but also in the church, toward people with mental health problems. I just think there's still some work to be done. There's still some misinformation out there that's leading to that stigma lingering around a little bit.
So let me ask you this. For those of us in the room who may not know or understand the data around how prevalent this actually is, can you give us some insight into exactly what we're talking about?
Roughly 46% of the American population will experience some type of diagnosable mental health problem in their lifetime. So that's pretty close to half the population. Right now, about 1 in 5 adults will have some type of mental health disorder in a year's time frame, and 1 in 6 children, so ages roughly 6 to 17, minors, will have some type of mental health diagnosis within a year's time frame. People who have a mental health disorder typically live significantly less long than those who don't. So there's a 25-year difference that we see. And for people who have mental health problems, they shorten their lifespan. A lot of that is because of the chronic medical conditions that often come along with having a mental health disorder, a severe mental health disorder. We also see that anxiety accounts for about 20% of the diagnosis that we assign, with depression not being too far from that.
Sure.
There is no significant difference in terms of the occurrence of mental health problems from those in the general public to those who are in the church. And so your faith doesn't fix you, in that regard. And then suicide unfortunately has increased significantly, about 33%, from 1999 to 2017, which is when the CDC did their last publication on it. And suicide is the second leading cause of death for people ages 10 to 34. It's the fourth leading cause of death for people ages 34 to 54. And in the state of Michigan, someone dies by suicide every 7 hours.
So when I hear these statistics, it feels like especially suicide is increasing, but a lot of them seem like they are as well. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that is? Why are these rates increasing over time in the way that we're talking about it?
Well, part of it is professionally, I can speculate to this. We have come up with more sensitive ways of measuring for mental health issues and symptoms, and so our diagnostic tools have become more advanced in that regard. I think there's a lot of pressure as well, from teenagers and adults are experiencing that has increased over the years. Pressure to be perfect, pressure to be successful, pressure to be fill in the blank, right?
Sure.
And that pressure, leads to anxiety. It also leads to a sense of wanting to escape. Right? I don't want to be here. Helplessness and hopelessness tend to be predictors of suicide. And so when you have the withdrawal of the general population from the church, right? That's a part of it as well. They're not getting those gospel messages of hope, and now they're getting messages of negativity, of, through the media. You see all of the destruction in the world and all the bad things that are happening, and there's nothing to counter that. There's nothing positive to counter that. And so despair can set in and lead to wanting to take your life because of the things that are going on, or even short of wanting to take your life, anxiety and depression increase because of all the things that you're exposed to.
Sure. I think of the parents in the room who have teenagers in particular, right? And you said, like, especially that number has increased. How would you talk to a parent about that and having that conversation? Because I think there's probably some parents who would go, well, I don't even know that I would want to plant that seed, or I don't even know that we would even want to talk about depression like that. What would you say to them?
Right. You're not planting a seed. Right. It's a myth that if we talk about it, then somehow the person's going to do it. Right. So I think when we don't talk about it, then the people are going to do it because they feel like nobody cares. Right. And so asking the question gives the person permission to say, yes, I'm hurting. This is what's going on with me. I'm terrified because I'm thinking about taking my life. That's not a comforting thought, right? That's a terrifying thought. And so I would encourage parents or spouses or whoever to say, I've noticed these things about you. I noticed you don't seem as happy. I've noticed that you're more withdrawn. I've noticed that you're more irritable, and I want to understand what's going on with you. Can we talk about how you're feeling? And in that conversation, you can ask, have you had thoughts about hurting yourself? I know that's scary and we don't want to bring that up, but it's so important to go there with your child or with your loved one to make sure that they're feeling safe.
So even in just what you were describing with the numbers and the statistics that you were giving, it feels like there's almost a spectrum, or there's kind of a range of people that are kind of walking this journey and what that looks like. So I think my question is, what would you say to the person who's going, I might be somewhere in that spectrum, but I'm not exactly sure where. What's my first step to take right now?
I think being honest with yourself about what you're experiencing and what you're feeling, being vulnerable, not being afraid to be vulnerable. I think denial is a very comfortable place to be. And sometimes we get lost there and we even minimize to ourselves what we're experiencing, and we put on this front that things are going so well and we're feeling good, but really on the inside we're not feeling great. And so being vulnerable enough with yourself to say, I need help, I'm not doing okay. And then closely following that step would be the next step of then finding a person to talk to, taking that courageous step and saying to someone that you trust, a safe person, I'm not okay and I need help. I think if you can have someone to walk along with you during that journey, it makes a huge difference in terms of your outcome and your healing process.
That's great. Dr. Carter, again, thank you so much.
You're welcome.